Now that your wife is dead, grieve, pack your bags, and never come back. My son-in-law announced at dinner. Charming, isn't he? Shakespearean subtlety with the warmth of a tax audit. And my daughter, my own flesh and blood, just smiled and nodded like she was approving the dinner menu. Apparently, the house was never really mine. Silly me. I thought 23 years of mortgage payments might count for something. So, naturally, I left. Not to pack my bags, mind you, but to visit the bank. Because if I was going to be exiled, I might as well start plotting like a Bond villain. But before we get into that, do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Misery loves company, after all. And let me know where you're listening from. Because apparently even strangers on the internet might care more than my daughter does. The fork trembled in my hand as I stared across the table. 7 days. That's how long it had been since Martha's funeral. A week of grief, expecting comfort, maybe even compassion. Instead, Perry, the son-in-law who came free with a marriage like a bad warranty, leaned back his chair like he'd already listed my house on Rightmove. "Harold, we need to talk," he said, as if he hadn't already launched his little coup. Sienna wouldn't meet my eyes. My daughter, the girl who once cried over squash caterpillars, now fiddled with her wedding ring like it was a detonator. The roast beef sat there, slowly congealing, as if even the meat knew this was a waste of time. "What's on your mind, son?" I asked, the word son tasting like vinegar. Perry had never been a son to me, just a bloke who convinced Sienna that smugness was a personality trait. "This house." He waved his arm at the dining room, our dining room, where Martha had made every birthday magical, every Sunday roast perfect. "It's too big for one person." My chest tightened. 23 years I'd lived here. 23 years of fixing boilers, paying bills, repainting walls. "Exactly," Perry said with that smug smile that made me want to introduce his face to the gravy boat. "Time for a change. Sienna and I, we need space." Of course they did. Because apparently my daughter's adult life wasn't complete until she'd repossessed her childhood home. "Sienna?" I turned to her, desperately searching for some trace of the girl who used to protect sparrows with broken wings. She finally looked up, Martha's eyes staring right through me. "Perry's right, Dad. It's too much for you now." Too much. As if love, sacrifice, and mortgage payments could be measured in cubic meters. "And where do you expect me to go?" I asked, carefully putting down my fork before I lobbed it across the table. "Senior living," Perry said. "Assisted care. Somewhere appropriate for your age." Appropriate. Like a cardigan or dentures. Sienna chimed in with that voice people use when explaining basic arithmetic to toddlers. "Dad, you're 67. Mom's gone. You shouldn't be rattling around this big house alone." Rattling around. Lovely imagery. Like I was a loose screw in the attic. Perry, now fully enjoying his role as executioner, added, "Look, Harold, be practical. Sell this place. Downsize. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. Except, of course, the man who built this home brick by brick. But details. You could have a nice little apartment," Sienna added. "Oh!" The rehearse lines. No maintenance, no worries, just exile with a side of betrayal. "And if I refuse?" I asked. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Perry leaned back, smug as ever, and said the line that will no doubt echo in my skull until I die. "Now that your wife is dead, grieve. Pack your suitcases and never come back." Such poetry. Move over, Keats. "And my daughter?" She nodded. "Perry's right, Dad. It's time." Something in me froze, not shattered, not broke. Froze, crystallized into something sharp, unyielding. I stood, my legs steadier than they had any right to be. "I see." 2 words. That's all I gave them. 2 words carrying 38 years of marriage, 23 years in this house, and 7 days of grief weaponized against me. I took my jacket, ignoring Perry's smug, "Smart choice, Harold. We'll help you look at places tomorrow." Oh, how generous. I stepped outside. My own front porch suddenly felt like enemy territory. The house glowed warmly behind me. My house, my life, my family. Correction, my former family. I walked to my car, every step deliberate, every breath steady. I didn't look back. Back in the study later, alone, I cleared the plates with mechanical precision. Their car doors had slammed 20 minutes earlier, echoing like gunshots in the silence. I sank into my leather chair, staring at the graduation photo on my desk. Sienna at 22, beaming, arms around Martha and me. $89,000. That's what her education cost me. $89,000. Or, as I like to call it, the price tag on parental love, itemized neatly in semester installments, dormitory fees, and overpriced textbooks she never opened. Every pound, dollar, transferred gladly, while I watched my savings shrivel up like a raisin in the Arizona sun. May 2013, the university auditorium was stuffed full of proud parents, cheap gowns, and bad air conditioning. But I only saw her, Sienna, when they called her name, Sienna Marie Butler. Martha squeezed my hand so tight her wedding ring practically carved its initials into my palm. Our daughter walked across that stage like she'd just invented education. Afterwards, in the car park, she'd thrown her arms around me, crying into my neck like she'd just won an Oscar. "I can't believe you did this for me, Dad." Her voice broke, full of gratitude, sincerity, and the sort of promises teenagers make before life beats it out of them. $89,000. And a promise. "You gave me everything. You're worth every penny. Dad, I swear I'll take care of you, and Mom one day. Family takes care of family. Family takes care of family." A line that aged about as well as milk left in the sun. I reached the photo on my desk, tracing her 22-year-old face, all smiles and possibility. Fast forward 5 years, and guess what? Daddy's ATM machine was back in service. This time, $65,000 for a house down payment. Apparently, she and Perry, Prince Charming in a cheap suit, couldn't qualify a loan. Too much debt, insufficient credit. A financial resume so tragic it should have come with a warning label. They'd sat right here in my living room. Sienna crying. Perry nodding like a malfunctioning bobblehead. "We'll pay you back, Dad. Every dollar. With interest." Of course. The lies rolled off their tongues smoother than my checkbook slid out of the drawer. And then the wedding. $23,000 for a country club reception. So over the top, it could have funded a small hospital. Martha was already fading by then, but she insisted. "She's our only daughter, Harold. Let's give her a day she'll never forget." Mission accomplished. She'll never forget it. Neither will my savings account. During the father-daughter dance, Sienna whispered in my ear, "Thank you for everything, Dad. I'm so lucky to have you." Lucky. Perfect. Words that taste sour now, like chewing on a lemon peel. I walked to my filing cabinet. Martha always teased me about my bookkeeping, but at least numbers don't lie. They don't smile sweetly while stabbing you in the back. College, $89,000. House down payment, $65,000. Wedding, $23,000. Perry's grand construction business disaster, $38,000. Grand total, $215,000. Nearly 2/3 of my life, savings flushed down the golden toilet of their happiness. And then a memory. Sienna, age 7, wobbling on her bike while I ran beside her, breathless but proud. "We'll always be a family, right, Daddy?" "Always, sweetheart. Family takes care of family." If only I'd added, "unless your husband's a prat and you turn into a stranger." My phone buzzed. A text from Sienna. "Thanks for understanding, Dad. This is really for the best. We'll help you find a nice place tomorrow." Understanding. As if I'd agreed. As if being evicted from my own home by my darling daughter was just a fun little life update. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Something inside me shifted, hurt evaporating, leaving behind something colder, sharper. They thought they knew Harold Butler. Generous father. Grieving widower. Walking wallet. Bless them. They'd miscalculated. 35 years in banking had taught me exactly 2 things. Never trust the markets, and always know where the money's buried. I opened my laptop. Time to see exactly what my investments had bought me. Spoiler, not loyalty. Dawn found me staring at the ceiling. Martha's pillow still dented beside me. Sleep had been about as likely as Perry getting a steady job. By 7 a.m., I was showered, dressed in my best Navy suit, the one that said, "Yes, I will repossess your home, and no, I don't feel bad about it." Desert Community Bank gleamed like a glass fortress downtown. I'd worked there for decades. I knew every corridor, every cautious smile. "Mr. Butler," the receptionist beamed. "Haven't seen you in ages." "Here to see James Morrison," I said. "Financial consultation." Translation: "Let's see how royally screw my finances are thanks to my darling in-laws." 20 minutes later, I sat across from James in his corner office. Same oak desk, same meticulous neatness, same family photos lined up like proof of a stable existence. "You look well, Harold," James said, pouring coffee. "Sorry about Martha. She was a wonderful woman." "Thank you," I replied, taking the cup. Business weighed in my hands again, familiar as breathing. "I need to understand my exposure on some loans I guaranteed." He perked up, fingers tapping at the keyboard. "Which accounts?" "My daughter's mortgage. Anything connected to my son-in-law's ventures." His eyebrows twitched upwards as the files loaded. Never a good sign. "Well," he began, "since you co-sign on Sienna's mortgage and home equity line." "Home equity line?" I repeated. That was news. Apparently, my daughter had found creative new ways to sink me financially. "They're 60 days behind on payments," James continued, scrolling. "That puts your credit rating at risk." 60 days. My chest tightened. "And Perry?" James hesitated. "Always a bad sign. The equipment loan you guaranteed from Morgan Construction Services defaulted 4 months ago." Of course it had. $78,000 in principal plus interest and fees. $78,000. I set my coffee down very carefully, mainly so I didn't throw it at the window. "Harold," James said, voice full of that banker sympathy that really just means you're royally screwed, mate. "Are you aware of their current financial situation?" Apparently not, unless utter financial arson counts as a situation. The home equity line was maxed out 6 months ago. $45,000 drawn against the property. Add that to the mortgage arrears and Perry's business default. He leaned forward like he was breaking bad news about a dying pet. "Your liability exposure is significant. Over $120,000 if they continue defaulting." Marvelous. Not only had they torched every dollar I'd given them, they'd also managed to set fire to borrow money and then stuck me with the extinguisher bill. "There's more." Of course there was. James dropped his voice for dramatic effect. "Perry filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks ago." Bankruptcy? How convenient. Protects him from creditors, but, naturally, leaves me holding the flaming bag of guarantees. And 2 weeks ago, right about when he and Sienna were sharpening their knives for the family dinner ambush. Hypothetically, James, I asked, if these accounts went into full default, what happens to property? "Foreclosure within 90 days, he said, tapping numbers like a man calculating my blood pressure. "Once everything's satisfied, you might see 10, 15,000 in equity left." 10,000 out of a house I'd sunk 65 grand into. Splendid return on investment, really. I stood, shook his hand with all the firm professionalism of a man pretending not to be plotting murder. "Thank you for your candor. Very useful." He stopped me at the door. "Harold, if you need documentation for legal purposes, I can prepare a full liability report." "Oh, do. I'll frame it for the mantelpiece." Outside, the Arizona sun was bright and cheery, mocking me with its optimism. I scrolled through my phone contacts until I found what I needed. 3 years retired. But I hadn't forgotten which lawyers specialized in financial recovery and estate planning. Sienna and Perry thought they'd cornered a grieving old man. What they'd actually done was poke a retired banking analyst who still knew exactly how leverage worked. Back home, the afternoon light slanted across my desk as I spread James's documents out like puzzle pieces. Loan agreements, payment histories, default notices, a timeline of financial disaster. My old calculator hummed to life beside a legal pad, numbers piling up like insults. Perry's construction business hadn't just failed. It had collapsed like a cheap deck chair. A $50,000 equipment loan had ballooned to $78,000 with penalties. He'd been using personal credit cards to prop it up, effectively turning family money into poker chips. 4 cards, $23,000 in debt. Minimum payments swallowing 40% of their monthly income, assuming Perry found steady work, which was about as likely as pigs filing their own taxes. Then came the mortgage. 3 months behind. Foreclosure in 60 days. And that little surprise, a maxed out home equity line for $45,000. Borrowing against a house to cover debts, then borrowing more to cover the borrowing. It was debt Jenga, and they were pulling blocks from the bottom. I leaned back, watching dust motes swirl in the sunlight. The numbers painted a perfect portrait of 2 people drowning in debt and trying to drag me under with them. Perry had already jumped ship with his bankruptcy, leaving me handcuffed to the wreckage. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Sienna. Dad, we found a lovely assisted living place in Tempe. Much more appropriate than that big empty house. Can we schedule a tour tomorrow? Yes. Lovely and appropriate. Translation. We've already measured your living room for our new sofa. I set the phone down. They weren't thinking about my comfort. They were thinking about mortgage payments, foreclosure timelines, and how quickly they could convert my home into their lifeboat. I went to the filing cabinet, found the stack of papers Martha and I had always kept in order, copies of every loan agreement I'd ever co-signed. And there it was, the full scope of my liability, $140,000, give or take, enough to make a grown man cry, or plot, but liability works both ways. Co-signers have rights they clearly never imagined I'd bother exercising. And me? 35 years in banking meant I knew every statute, every loophole. I opened my laptop, fingers already typing. The Arizona revised statutes. Section 47 to 3605. Dry as toast, but fascinating bedtime reading. Turns out, co-signers can demand immediate repayment or dissolution of obligations in cases of concealment, misuse of guaranteed credit, or, my personal favorite, attempted fraud. Well, then, let the games begin. My phone rang. Sienna again, because of course it did. Hi, Dad. Did you get my text about the tour? Yes, darling. I did. My voice sounded strange, even to me, calmer measured. The sort of calm you hear in surgeons before they cut something vital. Wonderful. They have availability next week. You could be settled in by month's end. Month's end. 23 days. Barely enough time to sort my socks, but plenty of time for my own daughter to evict me from my own home. Efficiency at its finest. Sienna, I need to ask you something. Are you and Perry having financial difficulties? Silence. The kind of silence that screams guilt louder than a toddler with a stolen biscuit. Why would you ask that, Dad? Because I have eyes, ears, and access to basic arithmetic. We're fine. Just looking for more space for our future. Ah, yes, the future. That magical land where money falls in the sky. Perry becomes competent, and I apparently vanish into assisted living like some old sofa left at the curb. Well, I said, we'll talk more tomorrow. Which was code for, I've got your number, sweetheart. After hanging up, I stared at Martha's degree on the wall, right next to mine. She was a trusting one, bless her, but also the one who insisted on keeping meticulous records. Trust but verify, she always said. And here I was, verifying that my only child was running a financial Ponzi scheme with me as the prize cow. Tuesday morning arrived, right on schedule, and so did the call. 8:45 a.m., the universal time for financially doomed. Early enough to look respectable, late enough to avoid sounding desperate. Good morning, Sienna. I answered, coffee in hand. Dad. Her voice quivered, like she was auditioning for EastEnders. I hope I'm not calling too early. Not at all, darling. I've been up since 6, practicing ways to say no with more flair. We need help, just temporarily. $15,000 would get us back on track. $15,000. Barely enough to stop the bleeding, let alone cure the corpse. No, I said. Clean. Sharp. Like a guillotine. Silence. Again. You could almost hear her soul leave her body. What? I said no. I won't be lending you money. Dad, this isn't for luxury. We could lose our house. Could? That's adorable. They were already 3 months behind. It's like saying the Titanic might sink because there's some water on the deck. You've always helped us, she pressed. College, the wedding, the house. Yes, 215,000 pounds of help. At this point, I could have bought a small island and a butler named Jeffrey. That was then, I said. What's wrong with you? We're family. Oh yes, family. That sacred word she conveniently forgot when telling me to pack my bags and vanish. Funny how family only matters when the checkbook's open. We just need 15,000 to catch up. And the answer is no. Dad, you have the money. You know you do. Yes, darling. And I also have common sense, shockingly still intact. But we'll pay it back. Which is hilarious because they never had. Not once. Every loan had a habit of undergoing a magical transformation from temporary assistance into Daddy's eternal donation fund. I could hear the panic in her voice now, cracking through like a bad violin string. The mortgage company called yesterday, 2 weeks before foreclosure. I'm begging you. 2 weeks? More like 1 if you read the fine print. But do carry on. Have you considered downsizing? I asked sweetly. Perhaps something more appropriate to your actual income. Her gas could have powered a wind farm. That house is our future. You helped us buy it. Correct. Helped, past tense. Grammar matters. What's really going on, she pushed. What's going on, my darling child, is that I've discovered the true market rate of your affection. 1 house, a hefty down payment, and my swift exit. This is about Sunday, isn't it? About what Perry said. Goodbye, Sienna. Click. The phone rang again immediately. I turned off the ringer and returned to my newspaper. Oh, look, an article on rising foreclosure rates in Arizona. How relevant. Outside, a mockingbird sang in Martha's rose garden. Roses bloom bright this year. She always said the secret was ruthless pruning. Cut away the diseased branches. Let the healthy ones flourish. Sage advice, and apparently applicable to family, too. A text buzzed through. Dad, please call me back. We need to talk about this. Delete. Coffee refill. Another beautiful day. 2 days later, notifications started rolling in. Credit inquiries. Emergency loans. Because, of course, when life gives Sienna lemons, she applies for 5 more loans to buy sugar. And guess who the system flagged as guarantor? Yours truly. 3 banks. 3 denials. All within hours. Apparently, the financial world was speedrunning their rejection. Efficiency at last. Shame it wasn't applied to paying bills. By Wednesday afternoon, I found myself parked across from Perry's construction site, watching through my windshield like some bitter David Attenborough special. Here we see the male of the species in his natural habitat, flailing helplessly while trying to look competent. There he was, shouting into his phone, gesturing wildly like he was conducting an invisible orchestra. His supervisor approached twice. Both chats ended with Perry storming off, shoulders tight, face red, like a child denied a second pudding. A man under pressure makes mistakes. And in construction, mistakes don't just cost money. They occasionally take out someone's front porch. Thursday morning brought me to Common Grounds, the local coffee shop where the banking crowd had been gossiping for decades. For 30 years, I'd cultivated contacts here, and now those casual cappuccinos were finally paying dividends. Harold Butler as I live and breathe. Margaret Walsh slid into my booth like a banker in a spy film. Haven't seen you since Martha's service. How are you holding up? Day by day, I said smoothly. Translation. My wife is gone. My daughter's plotted my eviction. But at least the coffee's still good. She stirred her latte with the solemnity of someone about to deliver a death sentence. Speaking of keeping busy, we had an interesting application yesterday. Your son-in-law, Perry Morgan. Ah, and here it was. I kept my face neutral, banker's poker face. Oh, high-risk case, she went on. Debt-to-income ratio approaching 60%. Business bankruptcy. Multiple inquiries across town. 60%. Worse than even I calculated. At that point, you're not in debt. You're auditioning for a Channel 5 documentary called Britain's Dumbest Borrowers. We couldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Neither could anyone else, Margaret said. I offered the classic family man line. Finances can be complicated, which was like saying Chernobyl was a bit of a mishap. She leaned closer, all conspiratorial. Between you and me, Harold, they're looking at foreclosure inside 2 weeks. 2 weeks? My estimate had been optimistic, delightful. The sad part, she added, is if they'd had a qualified co-signer, we might have helped. But they came in alone, desperate as church mice. Qualified co-signer. Oh, the irony. I'd been their golden ticket once. Now I was the bouncer at the door, and they weren't on the list. After Margaret left, I sipped my coffee, digesting the irony with extra foam. Perry and Sienna were learning the hard way. Financial reputation is like virginity. Lose it once, and everyone in town suddenly remembers. On the drive home, I passed their apartment complex. Sienna's car was in the lot, bonnet up, steam pouring out like a broken kettle. There she stood, phone in hand, summoning repair shops she couldn't afford. Watching her, I almost felt sorry. Almost. Back in my study, I pulled up the credit monitoring service I'd wisely kept on accounts I'd guaranteed. 7 loan applications. 7 rejections. Each denial hammering their credit score lower, like watching someone dig their own grave and complain the spade is heavy. My phone buzzed. A text from Sienna. Dad, can we please talk? I know you're angry about Sunday, but we're family. Families help each other through difficult times. How touching. Family help? Interesting, because last Sunday, family apparently meant pack your things, old man, and don't forget your slippers. Delete. That evening, the news ran a segment on rising foreclosures in Arizona. Families overstretched. Discovering credit wasn't infinite. Shocking, I know. A housing council went on about honest communication and family support systems. Yes, darling, honest communication is indeed helpful. Shame my daughter preferred ambush tactics. The phone rang. Sienna, again. I watched it flash and buzz, serenading me with desperation. After 7 rings, voicemail picked up. Seconds later, the notification chimed. Dad, it's me? Maybe Perry was too direct on Sunday, but we're struggling. I've never asked for anything without paying it back. This is different. This is our home, our future. Never asked for anything without paying it back. Adorable. Somewhere, the 73,000 pounds they forgot to repay was laughing itself sick. Their future, apparently, was built on my generosity, my signatures, my checkbook. Now that the Bank of Dad had closed its doors, they were learning what the future really looked like. I poured myself a scotch and settled into Martha's armchair. Outside, the desert sky glowed orange and pink, beautiful, merciless, like life itself. Friday evening, 7:30 sharp. The witching hour of the financially damned. The phone rang. This time, Perry. His voice carried the exhaustion of a man rejected more often than a spam email. Harold, we need to talk. I'm listening. Look, maybe I was too direct Sunday, but we're family. Families help each other through difficult times. Ah, there was again the family card. It only seemed to surface when their credit card declined. Is that what we are, Perry? Family. Of course, Harold. We're in serious trouble. The banks won't touch us. Something about debt-to-income ratio, credit inquiries. I don't understand all the financial terminology. I did. Oh, I understood it perfectly. 60% debt-to-income ratio. In today's market, that wasn't a loan application. That was a suicide note. Financial terminology can be confusing, I said smoothly, which was a polite way of saying, you're bankrupt, Perry. Spiritually, financially, and, if I'm being honest, morally, we'll sign papers, pay interest, whatever you want. But if we don't get help soon, we lose everything. Everything. Their house, their credit, their comfortable fantasy that Dad's bank was still open with 24/7 customer support. As I recall, Perry, you told me to pack my bags and not come back. Silence, the kind that feels like a stretched elastic band, one snap away from hitting someone in the face. That was a misunderstanding, he stammered. I was stressed about the house being too big for you, worried about your safety, rattling around in all that space. Ah, yes, rattling around. Nothing says caring son-in-law, like suggesting your elderly father-in-law, is basically a loose marble in a shoebox. Interesting interpretation, I said, which was British for, you lie and get. Harold, please. Martha would have wanted you to help us. She loved Sienna, loved our family. She wouldn't want us to lose our home. Ah, there it was, the nuclear option, invoking the dead wife card. Almost admirable, really, weaponizing grief to cover missed mortgage payments. Subtle as a sledgehammer. Martha's gone, Perry. I make my own decisions now. His voice cracked, climbing the scale of desperation. This isn't the Harold I know. The Harold who helped with college, the wedding, the down payment. The Harold who wrote checks without question. Yes, well, that Harold tragically passed away Sunday evening, somewhere between the hors d'oeuvres of betrayal and the dessert course of eviction notices. This is about Sunday, isn't it? Panic, properly audible now. I apologize. I was wrong. I should never have suggested you leave your own house. Suggested, mind you, not meant. Just said out loud in full sentences. Apology noted. Then you'll help us? No. Why not? His voice exploded across the line. Less dignified businessman, more toddler denied a biscuit. You have the money. You know you do. 300,000 pounds in savings, maybe more. What's 15,000 pounds to you? Ah, the plot thickened. Someone had been snooping. How do you know my account balance, Perry? A pause, then a weak attempt at casual. Sienna mentioned, of course she did. Pillow talk, apparently, now included detailed breakdowns of my retirement accounts. How romantic. Look, that doesn't matter. What matters is you can save us, and you're choosing not to, as if generosity were an obligation, not a gift, like Tesco Club Card points. You're right, I said. I am choosing. You son of... He caught himself mid-expletive, sucking in air like an asthmatic vacuum. Harold, I'm trying to be respectful here, but you're pushing me. We're talking about your daughter's future, your grandchildren's inheritance. Grandchildren who, might I add, don't exist. But apparently even imaginary heirs were being dragged into this financial pantomime. Are you threatening me, Perry? I'm explaining reality, he hedged. If we lose this house, if our credit's destroyed, if bankruptcy comes, that affects everyone, including you. Everyone except the old man they tried to banish. Of course. Fascinating logic. I think our conversation is finished. Wait, Harold. Just tell me why. Why won't you help us? What did we do to deserve this? Where to begin? Weaponizing grief. Turning family into debt collateral. Banishing me from my own home? Or was it simply that they'd mistaken kindness for stupidity one too many times? Perhaps you should ask yourself why your loan applications keep getting rejected. Silence. The kind of silence where you could hear a penny drop, or in this case, several £1,000s worth of debt hitting the floor. Suspicion crept into his voice. What do you mean by that? Exactly what I said. Harold, what aren't you telling me? Oh, only everything. My network, my co-signer rights, my patience sharpened to a scalpel, my forensic knowledge of their financial desperation. Good evening, Perry. Harold, don't you dare hang up on. Click. Outside my study window, the desert sky bled crimson and gold. Beautiful, unforgiving. Much like justice when it finally wakes up. A text buzz seconds later. Perry, this isn't over, old man. Not by a long shot. I smiled and deleted it. For once, he was right. This wasn't over. Saturday morning arrived with clarity. Perry's little threats had crossed the line into game on. If he wanted hardball, fine. I'd play Wimbledon. First stop, the public library's Business Research Center. Because if there's one thing 23 years in banking teaches you, it's that every company leaves a paper trail, and Desert Vista Construction, LLC, was no exception. The database sang like a canary. Late payments to 3 subcontractors, permit delays, a workers' comp claim dangling like a guillotine. Next, I dove into construction industry databases. Rising material costs, labor shortages, municipal payments delayed. In short, Desert Vista wasn't just swimming in troubled waters. It was doing the Macarena in quicksand. At Common Grounds, I bumped into Bob Henley, City Planning Department, now retired and blessedly gossipy. "Construction's brutal these days," he said, stirring his coffee like it was a crime scene. "Half these small outfits are one project away from bankruptcy." "I imagine permit compliance is crucial in that environment," I mused. "More than ever," Bob nodded. "One violation, and a job's dead for weeks. And between you and me, Desert Vista's been sloppy. Safety protocols dodgy. Insurance documents late. Nothing actionable yet, but it's all piling up. Interesting. Very interesting. I left with a new spring in my step. If Perry thought I was just a grieving old man he could bully, he was in for a masterclass in financial chess. Checkmate was coming. Safety protocols. Insurance documentation. Otherwise known as the sort of paperwork normal people ignore until something explodes, collapses, or bursts into flames. In construction, though, it's apparently the difference between a tidy profit and a regulatory firing squad. So there I was Sunday morning cross-referencing public records like an unpaid intern. And oh, the treasures I unearthed. Desert Vista owed $67,000 to a concrete supplier, $42,000 to an electrician, and, my personal favorite, 3 misinsurance premiums. Nothing screams stable company like gambling with liability insurance. But the piece de resistance? 2 fresh complaints with the Better Business Bureau. One about incomplete work, the other about payment disputes. Not enough to bury a company outright, but certainly enough to make you wonder if Desert Vista was being run by adults or by toddlers with Lego sets. I dug out my old contact list, because retirement is just code for I still know everyone who matters. David Marsh at Southwest Insurance. Sarah Adams at Municipal Licensing. Both owed me favors, and I do so enjoy calling in favors. By Sunday afternoon, I'd placed a few discreet inquiries. Nothing outrageous, just a concerned old man asking questions about compliance. You know, professional due diligence, with just a pinch of malicious curiosity. David sighed heavily, probably imagining the mountain of paperwork this conversation would create. "Harold, between us, they're on thin ice. 2 late payments, and we're required to notify their bonding company. 1 more missed premium, and their coverage lapses." Coverage lapses. Translation. Construction site instantly transforms into an illegal DIY death trap. Lovely. Sarah at Licensing was no more encouraging. They've had permit issues. Foreman's been submitting incomplete safety plans. Twice last month. Incomplete safety plans. That's like forgetting to bring the parachute when you go skydiving. By Sunday evening, I had the full picture. Desert Vista was a circus on fire, balancing on a regulatory tightrope with cash flow sharks circling below. 1 wobble and splash. Unfortunately for Perry, wobbles were his specialty. I typed up a little something for my new pen pal, Bob Henley. Just a friendly email, really. "Bob, enjoyed our chat yesterday. Thought you might find these compliance reports interesting. Attachments included. Nothing secret, nothing falsified. Just the kind of information anyone could dig up if they had no life, infinite spite, and access to the internet." Bob would open it Monday morning, share it with colleagues, and by Friday Perry would be crying into his hard hat. And, right on schedule, Monday delivered. At precisely 3:15 p.m., Perry's pickup truck appeared in the driveway, 2 hours earlier than usual. I was parked nearby, coffee in hand, watching like a nosy pensioner with CCTV. He sat motionless for 10 minutes, the defeated posture of a man whose empire had crumbled before the afternoon tea break. Desert Vista's permits had been pulled. Projects shut down. Layoffs. The works. Honestly, I was impressed. Bureaucracy normally takes weeks to ruin lives, but Perry managed to fast-track it. Through their thin, paper-wall house, Ray's voices spilled into the street. His gesturing was visible to the front window, the sort of arm flailing you'd expect from someone trying to explain away a small misunderstanding like murder. Then came Tuesday morning. Oh, what a treat. I was reading the paper at the park, which is code for spying, when Sienna's scream sliced the desert air like a bottle smashing on tile. Pure anguish. I didn't need subtitles to know what had happened. Perry had finally confessed. $78,000 in hidden business debt. Bankruptcy incoming. The whole mess of lies unraveled in one glorious, catastrophic disclosure. Through the kitchen window, I saw her silhouette thrashing about, arms waving, voice sharp enough to cut glass. Perry stood rigid, palms out, the international body language for, "Please don't stab me." It was domestic theater at its finest. And then Sienna stormed out, phone glued to her ear. Call 1, 3 minutes, probably to her sister in California. Call 2, shorter, sharper. By call 4, she was pacing the driveway, desperation bleeding through every syllable. "Mom, I know it's early, but we need help." And there it was. The Butler family bank may have closed its doors, but apparently the branch in California was still open for business. Serious help. That's what Sienna kept calling it. Perry had lost his job, but apparently that wasn't nearly enough, because the universe had decided to pile on much more. She vanished indoors for 10 minutes, only to reappear with a phone welded to her ear. Call after call, each one dripping with panic. By noon, she basically auditioned for Britain's Got Desperation. Meanwhile, Perry decided to cope in the time-honored way. 2 trips to the off-license and 1 to a pawn shop. He shuffled home with little boxes, personal possessions exchanged for pennies, the financial equivalent of burning your furniture to keep warm. Always a great sign in a marriage. I set up camp in the public library car park for the afternoon, pretending to run errands while keeping a discreet eye on the crumbling soap opera next door. Honestly, my projections have been optimistic. Their collapse was accelerating faster than Perry's bar tab. By 2 p.m., Sienna's friend Rebecca arrived. She stayed for an hour, enough time to absorb the teary confessions and desperate pleas. When she left, her expression was a perfect cocktail of sympathy and relief. Sympathy for Sienna. Relief that she hadn't been asked for money. That's the mark of a true friend, one who listens, nods, and thanks God they're not you. But the real entertainment came that evening. Their rose spilled onto the porch, voices cranked up to 11. I pretended to water Martha's roses, but really I had front row seats. You bankrupted us. Sienna's voice carried across the street, rich with betrayal and disbelief. Music to my ears. Wednesday evening, the main event finally arrived. Sienna and Perry shuffled up my drive, all red-rimmed eyes and defeated postures. The sort of gait you only see in people who've run out of excuses and money. The doorbell rang once, a timid, apologetic little ping. I made them wait, naturally. Timing is everything. A villain in the shadows must always adjust his tie before delivering lines. "Dad," Sienna whispered, her face blotchy from crying. "Thank you for seeing us." I replied smoothly, stepping aside but doing absolutely nothing that could be mistaken for welcoming. They perched on my sofa like naughty schoolchildren. Martha's chair stayed empty beside me, a silent, spectral reminder what their selfishness had cost me. "I suppose you have something to discuss," I said, because we were all pretending this was an ambush. Sienna broke first. "Dad, we're in serious trouble. I know we made mistakes." Mistakes, I repeated like a doctor diagnosing gangrene. Interesting choice of word for lying, scheming, and financially detonating your life. Then Perry, dragging his pride behind him like a dead mule. "What I said about you packing your bags, completely inappropriate." I was stressed. Stressed, of course. That catch-all excuse that covers everything from mass murder to burning the dinner. I tilted my head. About what specifically? His jaw tightened, his pride bleeding out of him in slow drips. Business problems. Debt issues I should have discussed with Sienna earlier. How much debt, Perry? Silence. The kind of silence that grows teeth. Eventually, the number slithered out. 78,000. I raised an eyebrow. That's substantial. And your employment situation? I lost my job. Monday. He winced as though lost men had fallen behind the sofa. He still hadn't realized that his downfall wasn't a tragic accident, but a very deliberate chain of dominoes. One-eyed line at myself. Sienna dissolved into tears. Dad, please. We lose the house in 5 days. I've called everyone. My sister, old friends, anyone who might help. Nobody has that kind of money. Except me, of course. The man she'd evicted from his own home. And you thought of me. I said, your family, you're all I have left since Mum died, she sobbed. She would have wanted us to stay together. Ah, yes, the dead wife card. Classic. Pull it out when all else fails. Smear it on like cheap perfume, and hope it masks the stench of betrayal. I leaned back. Your mother valued honesty above all else. She kept meticulous records. Transparency in every matter, especially financial. The implication hung in the air like a noose. And as Sienna sat there, weeping into her hands, Perry glaring at the carpet like it owed him money, I felt it. The delicious satisfaction of a plan entering its next phase. Income, gone. Credit, obliterated. Marriage, circling the drain. Phase 2 was complete. Phase 3, well, that would be even more entertaining. For now, though, I pour myself a scotch and watch the desert sky bleed crimson and gold. Justice, it seemed, had a flair for dramatic lighting. Sienna missed the implication entirely. Not unusual for her, but Perry's eyes narrowed. At last, the penny was wobbling dangerously close to the slot. Dad, I know I haven't been the perfect daughter, Sienna whimpered. Understatement of the decade, but I'm still your little girl. Please don't abandon me when I need you most. Ah, yes, your little girl. The same little girl who'd stood by like a mute extra while her husband ordered me to pack up my life and sod off. Forgive me if the violin doesn't play. What exactly are you asking me to do? I ask because I do like clarity before the begging begins. Lend us money, Perry blurted, straight to the point, as if I'd simply forgotten the 78,000-pound shaped elephant in the room. 40,000 would cover the arrears and give us breathing room. 40,000. Adorable. A sticking plaster on an amputated leg. That's a substantial sum, I said mildly. We'll pay you back, Sienna promised, with the confidence of a woman whose credit rating had just been set on fire. With interest. Whatever terms you want. We'll even put the house up as collateral. Oh, the house? You mean the house I already helped buy, underwrote, and effectively gift wrapped for you? What a generous offer. I leaned back, studying their hollow faces. And if I refuse? The silence was delicious. Sienna's shoulders shook. Perry stared at the carpet, as though it might whisper the answer. Then we lose everything. Sienna choked. Our home, our marriage, our future. Their future. A delicate little construct held together with lies, duct tape, and Perry's spectacular financial literacy. I stood and wanted a window, where Martha's roses were in full bloom. She'd always said proper pruning was essential. Cut deep enough and the plant thrives. Cut wrong and it dies. Seemed fitting. This is quite a predicament you've landed yourselves in, I said, as their quiet sobs filled the room. And oh, how I savored it. The exquisite moment when people finally realize the safety net has teeth. Before I consider your request, I turned, slowly, letting the weight of the moment hang. You should understand exactly how you arrived here. Sienna blinked at me, blotchy and tear-streaked. What do you mean? I mean, I said, strolling to my desk, that very little of this has been coincidental. Perry's head snapped up, suspicion hardening into horror. From the drawer, I pulled a bulging manila folder. Let me show you something interesting. Their eyes followed as I spread papers across the table. Monday, March 18th. I visited James Morrison at Desert Community Bank. Perry went pale. You did what? As co-signer on your loans, I had every legal right. James was very thorough. £78,000 in business debt. 3 months behind on the mortgage. Credit cards maxed at 60%. Honestly, Perry, it was impressive in a sort of financial suicide note way. Sienna blinked. Dad, I don't understand. Of course you don't. I conducted a professional risk analysis. 23 years in banking teaches you when a client's beyond salvage. And you, my darlings, were a textbook case. You were analyzing us. Perry croaked, as though this was some kind of betrayal. Not, say, the part where he threw me out of my own house. Obviously, I said. When Sienna called begging for 15 grand, I'd already penciled it into the calendar. It was as predictable as been collection day. You plan to refuse, Perry muttered, voice shaking with the first hints of rage. You told me to pack my bags and never come back. What did you imagine, Perry? That I'd send a fruit basket. I flicked to the next sheet. And as for your charming attempts to get new credit, Scottsdale's banking community is a very small pond. Margaret Walsh at First National, David Adams at Community Trust, Sarah Morrison at Southwest Credit. Old colleagues, all delighted to receive a word of caution. Perry shot to his feet, red-faced. You blacklisted us. Don't be melodramatic. I shared legitimate concerns about risk factors. Publicly available information. If you tanked afterwards, that's hardly my fault. I just pointed out the iceberg. You steered into it. Sienna stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying, I replied, flipping to the piece de resistance, that Desert Vista construction was already circling the drain. I merely gave city planning a nudge. Insurance payments late. Safety protocols sloppy. A regulatory brush-up was inevitable. You got me fired, Perry whispered. I ensured the authorities had all the facts. I corrected. If your company collapsed under the weight of truth, perhaps don't build it on lies. Finally, I drew out my handwritten timeline. Every call, every denial, every carefully engineered moment. Perry snatched it up, hands shaking, eyes scanning the meticulous notes. You planned all this? Sienna's voice cracked. Yes. From the moment your husband told me to get out, I did what I do best. I analyzed vulnerabilities and applied pressure. 35 years in banking, darling. I didn't waste them. Perry lunged, clutching papers. You manipulative old. Careful, I said, voice like steel. You're still in my house. Still begging. He froze, trembling, documents rustling like guilty confessions in his fists. The truth had finally landed. Every coincidence, every setback, every cruel twist of fate had been me, pruning the roses. You destroyed our marriage, Sienna sobbed, like she just uncovered some great cosmic injustice. Correction. Your marriage was already a sinking ship. I merely supplied the iceberg. Call it strategic landscaping. We're your family, she added. Family. That magical word people whip out only when they need money. Family, who had absolutely no problem tossing me out of my own home after 38 years of service, sacrifice, and apparently very selective memory. That Sunday evening, dearest, you redrew the lines. I'm just coloring inside them. Sienna collapsed onto the couch as though gravity itself had betrayed her. How could you do this to your own daughter? How could you stand there while your husband ordered me to pack a bag and vanish? I asked back, tit for tat, except I play chess while they play Connect Four. Perry, in his usual burst of temper, hurled the papers across the room, scattering weeks of meticulous documentation. You're a monster. No, Perry. I corrected, adjusted my glasses with all the serenity of a Bond villain. I'm a professional who applied systematic thinking to a personal inconvenience. You thought you were bullying a pensioner. Turns out, you picked a war with an accountant. Fatal error. The room went silent, apart from Sienna's tears dripping like a leaky tap and Perry's breathing, which suggested early onset cardiac arrest. Both of them sat there, finally realizing they'd been outmaneuvered by the one person they'd underestimated most. I returned to my chair, calm as you like. Shall we discuss terms? Terms. Sienna whispered, as though the word itself might bite. Yes, terms. You told me to disappear. Now you need me to keep your lives from collapsing into a Channel 5 documentary. Let's acknowledge reality, shall we? Perry looked up, hatred in his eyes but desperation in every other feature. What do you want? First, a written apology. Public. None of this half-hearted sorry, Dad, whispered over tea. I want it printed in the neighborhood newsletter and slapped on your social media accounts for all the world to see. You humiliated me. Now you'll correct the record. You want us to humiliate ourselves? Perry spat. No. I want you to acknowledge, in writing, that telling a grieving widower to get out was cruel. I think the neighbors would find that enlightening. Sienna nodded miserably. Okay, we'll do it. Splendid. Second, you will treat me with the respect due to the family patriarch. No more orders. No more financial presumptions. And, shock horror, no more telling me to leave my own house. Yes, Harold, Perry said through clenched teeth. It was almost poetic, watching the words crawl out of his mouth like broken glass. Third, I continued, because the best lists always come in threes. Any financial support comes with conditions. You'll follow my financial guidance, attend marriage counseling, and maintain employment I approve of. You want to control our lives? Perry asked. No, Perry. I want to protect my investment from two people who clearly can't tell the difference between money and monopoly notes. I walked to my desk, drew out my checkbook, and let the scratch of my pen slice through the silence. I'll provide £25,000, enough to keep foreclosure at bay and give you breathing space. Nothing more. Sienna's eyes went wide. But we need 40. Then consider this your first lesson in fiscal reality. Rescue is when someone drags you off the tracks. Assistance is when they just make sure the train's 5 minutes late. I tore out the check and set it on the coffee table like a sacred relic. This comes with monthly reports, full transparency, counseling attendance, employment verification, and respectful communication. Fail once, and I revoke it. Perry stared at the paper like it was both salvation and cyanide. And if we refuse, he muttered, then you walk out that door and figure out without me. Simple as that. The silence dragged on, their pride wrestling their survival instincts into submission. Finally, Sienna caved. We accept. All of it. Perry nodded too, jaw clenched so hard it could have cracked granite. Excellent, I said. I picked up the check, held it just out of reach. You'll get this tomorrow, after the public apology is written and distributed. Tonight, consider your options. Spoiler, you don't have any. I walked them to the door. Their bodies slumped like marionettes with cut strings, a tragic downgrade from the arrogant couple who banished me a fortnight ago. One final thought, I said, leaning casually against the frame. You mistook grief for weakness, generosity for stupidity, and patience for powerlessness. A rookie error. Perry turned back, his face twisted with impotent fury. This isn't over, Harold. You're absolutely right. I smiled. It's not over. It's just beginning, under new management. I closed the door and gathered my scattered documents, the house settling back into silence, sweet, obedient silence. In my study, I opened Martha's photo. I think you'd be proud, I told her softly. They wanted me gone, but I'm still here, and now they know who they're dealing with. Justice, it turned out, wasn't just a dish best served cold. It was best served systematically.